Good evening and welcome to the first edition of My Humble Kitchen. My name is Leonard and I'll be teaching you how to make chicken cacciatore today. Alright. This is everything that you'll need for chicken cacciatore. Any amount of chicken thighs. I'm doing 5. I have 4 lightly coated right now. This is flour with salt, pepper, just for seasoning. We have chopped tomatoes, chopped and diced tomatoes in their broth because that's going to create the sauce for the chicken. Diced onion, garlic. I'm adding zucchini and squash. That's not traditional, but I love the vegetables and these are good Italian veggies. And basically half moon and 1/4 inch chopped. We have diced red and green bell peppers, quartered mushrooms, sea salt and pepper for taste, and also Italian seasoning and oregano. And right here is a 1/2 cup of dry white wine. Any white wine you like. I actually use cooking wine because it has salt already in it and its taste. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to bread the chicken so you can see that it's just a light coat. You don't need anything more. You don't need eggs. It's not a dredging. It's just breading. So what you do is take it, skin down. You want to leave the skin on because when you simmer it for a little bit, it's actually going to create a nice crunch. And that's what you want with skin. Skin is actually fat when it comes to chicken, and you want it to be nice and crunchy, and it'll give you a nice texture. Okay? Next thing you want to do is you have to have a nice large skillet because it's going to take the chicken and also the sauce. We are building it inside this pot. Luckily, this type of dish, you won't have a lot of cleaning to do because you only need 2 pots. One for the pasta, if you choose, and one for the food. I like to start in a medium flame so that it doesn't burn the chicken right when you start using it. And then you coat the pan with a little bit of olive oil. Just let that heat up for a little bit. But you want it to coat the pan nicely. Now while that's heating up, I want to explain that you can go to the store and buy minced garlic. It's really easy and it's faster, but I like to use fresh garlic because the taste is better. And while you're chopping onions, the best thing to do is chop onions when they're wet. It'll create less crying and tearing when you're chopping the onion. Okay. That seems like it's about ready, so we're going to start coating our chicken. Best thing to do when it's nice and hot, you bring it skin down. That'll create the skin to be crunchy as you're putting it in. Nobody likes rubbery skin when it comes to chicken. The reason why you need a nice size pan is because chicken thighs are very big. So this here is nice. So sauteing the chicken for about 5 minutes, you have to wait till there's a nice coating. Over here, we're actually going to save all this stuff inside the pan because this will create some flavor. Flip it over, and that's the color that you're going to want to start seeing. But you don't want to cook the chicken fully because you're going to have to put it back in the pot afterwards. But see the nice crunch that it's creating? The next step is we have to take the chicken out of the pan, but before we do that, we check the color. That's the color you want to see in your chicken. It's a nice golden brown. Okay, our chicken's ready to take out. So what we'll do is we'll set it aside, and I like the chicken to rest on a plate with paper towel so that it's not swimming in its own oil. So take that out. Good. Now we'll set that aside for the next 5 minutes. We bring the heat down to right in between medium and low. It's usually a button right there. It's like a temperature that you would like. And you keep all that in here. Next thing you're going to put in, you're going to add the zucchini, squash, if you decide to use them, the red and green bell pepper, the garlic, and the onion. We're not going to add the mushrooms yet because those take literally 5 seconds to cook and we don't want mushy mushrooms. So I like to actually start with the garlic. Garlic adds good flavor and it's actually prevalent in Italian cooking. You want those to brown nicely. Then the bell peppers. Get a nice even coat going. The zucchini. Now remember, this isn't part of the actual recipe. I just love zucchini and squash. The squash. And the onion. So the next thing you want to do is make sure you get a nice mix. You want the onion to touch the pan. And it's soaking up all that flavor from the chicken that we had in there. So that oil actually kept some flavor from the chicken. And chicken has very good flavor when you cook it right. And we're going to cover this. And we wait for bring the flame up to medium, and we wait for the onions to become sort of translucent, transparent. So the onions are starting to become more translucent. In other words, they're losing their white color and becoming invisible inside the pan. So at that point, we will add the chopped tomatoes. Now I used half of a 28 ounce can, which is perfect because you don't want to make way too much. You don't want it to taste like nothing but tomato when you have all these perfect flavors in here. You stir that around a little bit. Then now you start seasoning to taste. Now, it's always your own preference on what type of salt you like. Sea salt's a little bit healthier, so I'll sprinkle a little bit, probably just a half a teaspoon. A little bit of pepper, half a teaspoon. Definitely need some oregano. Oregano is one of the more prevalent herbs when it comes to Italian cooking. I would say we'll probably use a half a teaspoon. And something that I always add because it has a little bit of everything: rosemary, basil, oregano, and a little bit more Italian type seasonings. It's called Italian seasoning. Mix that around a little bit. It's coming good. It's looking good. Then, remember the chicken? Now we have to put it back into the pot. And that's when we'll finish cooking it. Just makes like a little nest when it comes to the chicken. So while that's working, the next thing you do is you add the half a cup of cooking wine. I use cooking wine. You can use any wine. Any dry wine will work. You don't want a sweet wine because a sweet wine, then that flavor will take over. And when you do this, this is actually considered deglazing the pan. Here's the main part. We bring it down to a medium-low heat. So like I said, in between medium and low. You cover it and you let that simmer for 30 minutes. That'll actually cook the chicken fully through, and then we'll talk about what the temperature of chicken should be before you even serve it to your family, because you want to make sure you serve safe chicken. So after you bring your pasta water to a boil, we still have about 5 minutes left for the cacciatore to simmer. I add a little bit of salt while it's boiling for taste, and then I just put in the pasta. And then the hot water will actually let it form into shape so you can stir it into the water. And then you let this boil. I use whole grain spaghetti. I like whole grain pastas because it is healthier than the white starch pastas. After I finish cooking, it's going to finish cooking after about 10 minutes. And I drain the water. I do not put cold water on top of the pasta. That actually cleans the pasta, and that starch that's inside of the pot of the water gets cleaned out, and the flavor just goes away. And I keep some of the starchy water from the pasta to put on top of the pasta after I drain it. That adds a little bit more flavor. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes since we started simmering our cacciatore. And this is the color that you want to see. You want to see a light orange color because you don't want the tomato to overpower the dish. Next thing, you add your quartered mushrooms. So we add the mushrooms, stir that in, make sure we mix it in so that it gets a nice even coat. Mushrooms just add a nice earthy taste. That is the point of mushrooms. Mushrooms have a nice earthiness to it. It adds flavor, it adds taste, and it's very healthy and yummy too. So we will now, after it's coated and all the mushrooms have been integrated into the dish, we cover it again and let it simmer for 10 minutes. While we do that, the pasta is ready. And the way that you know that the pasta is ready, you don't want it to stick together, but you also don't want it to be mushy. You want to have a nice crunch. It's called al dente. So it's right to the point where it's just cooked. Next thing we do, it's been about 10 minutes. The mushrooms should be nice and integrated. They're not mushy, but they're also not too hard. They're not raw. Next thing you do is, if you have a thermometer, I suggest you do, especially when you're cooking chicken. You go to the biggest part of the chicken, or the biggest piece of chicken, which would be this one right here, and you go to the thickest part, and you take the temperature. That's at 166, and that's perfect. 165 is the proper temperature you need to cook. So if you go a little bit over, that's perfect. As long as you don't go to your 200, 210, it's not overcooked. So we will turn that off. And I turn it off because we don't need to cook it anymore, obviously. Add a little bit of parsley. And this is just for decoration. It also has a nice flavor, but parsley has a light flavor. So that's my chicken cacciatore. And I also did use the pasta, but you can use anything you'd like. Obviously, you can use rice, you can use penne pasta, rigatoni, any pasta you'd like, or rice. And that will conclude today, and join us next time for a different dish.